Ethan Hale never expected to fight beside aliens in his lifetime. He grew up on Earth, in a small town where the loudest thing he ever heard was the sound of aircraft training above the forests. But the war changed everything. When the Obsidian Core, a machine empire with no feelings, no mercy, and no weakness, began destroying human colonies, the galaxy was forced into an alliance. Now Ethan, a young but steady human soldier, found himself in a mixed-unit strike team, standing in a bright metal hangar surrounded by species he had only seen in books. He checked his gear nervously, pretending he was focused, but inside he was wondering who his partner would be. The commanders had announced new pairs for the special missions. Humans, Valeri Ranthus, and 3 other species would be mixed together. Some soldiers were excited. Others worried that alien cultures might collide. Ethan, being someone who preferred calm and understanding, hoped his partner would at least respect teamwork. Then the doors at the far end opened, and a tall figure entered. Ethan turned, and his breath paused for a moment. She had silver-blue skin, bright violet eyes, and the firm posture of a trained warrior. Her hair, tied in a warrior braid, shone like metal threads under the lights. This was a Valeri soldier. Everyone knew the Valeri were strict, proud, and followed ancient warrior traditions. Many said they rarely trusted outsiders. Ethan guessed this might be difficult. The officer called out her name. Commander Leora Reth. The way the room went quiet told Ethan she held a high reputation. Leora stepped forward, her movements sharp and controlled. She scanned the room slowly, studying each soldier. When her eyes met Ethan's, she paused for an extra second, but her face stayed unreadable. Your partner for this cycle, the officer continued, is Specialist Ethan Hale of Earth. Ethan felt half the room look at him. He took a steady breath, walked forward, and stopped in front of her. Leora stood almost a head taller than him, and her expression was completely serious. I will follow your fighting rhythm, Ethan said politely, hoping to start well. You should follow efficiency, Leora replied calmly. Not my rhythm. Ethan blinked, unsure if that was an insult or a lesson. But she didn't walk away. She simply studied him carefully, as if measuring something about him. Their first assignment came immediately. A small Allied base at the edge of a destroyed system had sent a distress signal. They needed to extract survivors and retrieve important data before enemy drones arrived. It sounded simple, but everyone knew nothing was simple near Obsidian territory. Inside the shuttle, Ethan could feel the tension. Leora sat across from him with her arms crossed. Her posture was perfect, not a single movement wasted. Ethan tried to understand her. She seemed not angry, not annoyed, just focused. Like a blade pointed at a target. You have fought many battles? Ethan asked gently, trying to create some connection. The shuttle hummed as it dropped toward the broken planet. Enough, she answered. He waited for more, but nothing came. And you? She asked suddenly, surprising him. Only a few main battles, Ethan said honestly, but I stay calm under pressure. Good, she replied. Calm minds survive. Ethan almost smiled. That was the closest thing to a compliment he had heard from her. When the shuttle doors opened, the world below was covered in smoke and dust. Broken metal structures, deep craters, and silent ruins stretched in every direction. The sky was dim, filled with ash clouds that blocked most of the sunlight. Ethan felt a heaviness settle on him. War had taken away life here long ago. The team split into pairs, each moving toward a different sector of the base. Ethan and Leora moved quickly through fallen beams and destroyed corridors. She walked in front, her senses sharp, her purple eyes scanning every shadow. Ethan kept close, watching corners with his rifle. During the first few minutes, they barely spoke. Leora pointed with her hand, and Ethan followed. He warned her quietly when he saw movement. She nodded. Their teamwork was quiet but smooth. But when they reached the data room, the ground suddenly shook. A loud metallic roar echoed through the broken hallway, and the walls started breaking apart. Enemy drones, Ethan whispered. Leora tightened her grip on her blade-like weapon. Many. 4 drones appeared first, hovering through the dust. Then 6 more. Their round bodies glowed red, and their limbs unfolded with sharp tools ready for attack. Cover the left, Leora said quickly. I got it, Ethan answered. They moved as if they had trained together for months. Ethan fired short, clean shots, knocking down 2 drones. Leora dashed forward, her movements too fast to follow. Her blade cut through metal as if slicing through air. She struck one drone, dodged another, then used a broken wall to jump and land behind the enemy group. Ethan watched her with surprise. She fought with perfect precision, but when he saw a drone behind her charging a blast, he shouted, "On your right!" Leora turned just in time. Ethan fired a burst, destroying the drone before it could hit her. She didn't say anything, but her eyes softened for a moment. More drones arrived. The ground trembled under their weight. The metal structure above cracked loudly. "We must retrieve the data and leave," Leora said. Ethan rushed to the console, typing as fast as he could. The room shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Almost done," he said. Leora stood near him, slicing any drone that got close. She moved without fear, protecting the space around them. Ethan felt strangely safe despite the danger. Finally, the console beeped. "Got it." They turned to leave, but the ground beneath them suddenly opened. A hidden hole created by earlier explosions gave way. Ethan fell first with a shout, sliding down metal and stone. Leora reached for him, but the ground broke under her too. They both fell through darkness. Ethan hit the bottom hard but rolled to reduce the impact. Leora landed beside him with grace, though even she took a moment to steady herself. Above them, the opening collapsed, sealing the way they had come from. For a moment, there was silence. Then Ethan laughed weakly. "Well, this is new." Leora looked up at the sealed ceiling, then at him. "We will climb out." "I hope so." They tried to find a path, but the tunnels beneath the base were old and damaged. Strange sounds echoed from deeper inside, and the air grew colder. Ethan could feel tension in his neck. Their radios were blocked. "No signal." "This is not good," he said quietly. "It is a challenge," Leora replied. "We must think, not fear." Ethan admired her confidence, but even she looked unsure of the direction. They walked carefully, their lights cutting through the dark. When they turned a corner, they froze. A group of damaged drones sat in the tunnel, half active, some crawling slowly. The fall must have knocked them down too. One drone suddenly detected them and released a piercing alarm. "Move!" Leora shouted. They ran as the broken drones dragged themselves after them, sparks flying. Ethan fired behind him, destroying some. Leora helped pull him around a sharp turn just before a blast hit the corner they had been in. They stumbled into a wider hall, gasping. "Ethan," Leora said, "we must climb that pipe system." He looked up at the pipes running vertically toward a weak patch of ceiling. "You think it leads back up?" "It is the only path," she replied. She climbed first, her movement strong and sure. Ethan followed, though his muscles burned from the fall. At one point a pipe shook and Ethan slipped slightly. Leora reached down, grabbed his wrist tightly, and held him steady. Her grip was strong and warm. "You climb well," she said softly, "for someone without training in vertical travel." "And you save well," Ethan replied, trying to smile. She looked at him for a moment, and something changed in her expression. Not warm, not soft, but respectful. They continued climbing. After several long minutes, they reached a broken hatch. Together, they pushed it open and crawled out into a damaged corridor that led back toward the surface. When they finally reached daylight, Ethan took a deep breath. The sky, though smoky, felt like freedom after the dark tunnels. The shuttle arrived to extract them, and Ethan climbed aboard, tired but relieved. Leora sat across from him again, her posture calm. "You fought well," she said in her steady voice. "You too," Ethan answered. "I guess we do work well together." "Yes," she replied. Then after a pause, "We will become stronger partners." Ethan felt a small spark of pride inside him. The mission had been dangerous, chaotic and unexpected, but through it all, he and Leora had protected each other without hesitation. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of their bond, one that would grow far beyond what either of them imagined. The days after the mission passed quickly, but their effect stayed with Ethan and Leora. The entire base had heard how the human specialist and the Volari commander had survived underground tunnels, fought damaged drones, and escaped together. Soldiers from different species whispered when they passed by, some impressed, others simply curious. Ethan tried to ignore the attention. Leora did not react at all. She walked with the same calm discipline, her eyes focused on training or mission plans. Ethan noticed something, though. She did not treat him with the cold distance she had at the start. When they trained in the combat hall, she corrected his stance gently instead of sharply. When they walked to the briefing room, she adjusted her pace so he could walk beside her instead of behind her. These were small changes, but for someone like Leora, who followed ancient traditions and strict rules. These changes meant something. Their next mission was announced sooner than expected. The Obsidian Corps had launched a sudden attack on several supply routes, and one of the Allied outposts had gone silent. Ethan and Leora were assigned to lead a small squad to investigate. The moment they heard, Leora looked at Ethan. "This mission will be harder," she said. "I figured," Ethan replied. "We must be ready for danger," she added. Ethan smiled slightly. "I trust you." Leora paused for a moment as if she was not used to hearing those words. Trust in Valari tradition was something earned through battle, not given in casual conversation. She nodded once. "I will not fail." "You won't," Ethan said softly. They boarded the transport ship with 4 other soldiers. 2 humans, 1 Ranthus scout, and 1 Valeri heavy trooper. During the journey, the mood inside the ship felt tense. The view outside showed stars passing by, but everyone knew they were heading toward a place that might already be destroyed. Ethan checked his equipment carefully. Leora sharpened her blade, her movements controlled and slow. She glanced at him. "Your thoughts are loud," she said. Ethan chuckled. "Is that your way of asking what's wrong?" "Yes," she replied simply. He looked down at his hands. "I'm thinking about that outpost. I don't like when a whole place goes quiet. Silence before battle is normal," Leora said. "But silence after? That means something took their breath away." "That's what I'm afraid of," Ethan admitted. Leora watched him for a moment. "Fear is natural, but you do not let it control you." He didn't expect such a thoughtful reply. He looked up at her, grateful. "Thanks. We will survive this mission," she added. "We survived the tunnels. Now we are stronger." Ethan nodded. He believed her. When the ship arrived at the outpost, the door opened to a strangely peaceful sight. The buildings were standing, the lights flickered weakly, but there was no sign of life. No footsteps, no voices, just wind blowing across dusty ground. The Ranthus scout whispered. "Too quiet," Ethan agreed. They entered the main courtyard. Some supplies were scattered on the ground, but there were no marks of fighting. It looked like everyone had simply walked away. Leora raised her hand. "Stay alert. Something is wrong." They searched room by room. Beds were unmade and tables were left with unfinished meals. It felt as if time had stopped suddenly. As they moved through the outpost, Ethan felt uneasiness growing in his chest. They found signs of movement near the control center, scratches on the floor and broken pieces of metal. Then the air flickered with a strange hum. The Ranthus scout pointed. "Energy signature." The walls suddenly lit up with red patterns. A trap. Before anyone could react, the obsidian drones emerged. This time they were not the small scouting drones Ethan had fought before. These ones were larger, shaped like armored spiders with glowing red eyes. They moved fast, their legs clashing against the floor like metal thunder. "Hold position," Leora shouted. The team formed a defensive circle. Ethan fired rapidly, each shot shaking his arms. The drones moved unpredictably. One leaped toward Ethan and Leora intercepted it with a sharp strike, slicing off a limb. Sparks flew across the room. "Thanks," Ethan shouted. "Keep focus," she ordered. The room echoed with blast and metal clashes. The humans tried to hold the line while the Valari heavy trooper fought with powerful strikes. Despite their efforts, the drones pushed harder, forcing the squad backward. "We need to fall back," Ethan said. "No," Leora protested. "We need the control room. Something here is important to the enemy." Ethan trusted her instincts, but the drones were too many. One of the human soldiers was knocked to the ground. Ethan ran forward and pulled him back just as a drone tried to stab him. "Stay with me," Ethan yelled, but the soldier was unconscious. Leora moved to cover them. Her blade shone in the dim light as she fought 3 drones at once. Her movements were pure discipline, every step precise, every slash controlled. Ethan admired her strength. She seemed unstoppable. But then a drone behind her aimed a heavy blast. Ethan reacted without thinking. He leaped forward, knocking Leora out of the way just before the blast exploded against the floor. The shockwave hit him hard, throwing him across the room. Leora spun around in shock. For the first time, Ethan saw fear in her eyes, fear for him. "Ethan," she shouted. He tried to stand, but pain spread through his side. A piece of metal armor had cracked. Leora grabbed him and pulled him behind cover with surprising gentleness. "You are injured. I'll live." Ethan groaned. "You should not have done that. You would have been hit." Her expression tightened. My life is my own risk, but you? You jumped for me. Of course, he said breathlessly. We're partners. Something changed in that moment. A silent understanding passed between them, something deeper than simple teamwork. The drones were regrouping. The Ranthus scout called out, "They're coming again!" Leora helped Ethan stand. "Stay behind me." "I can still fight," he insisted. "We fight together," she corrected. The drones surged forward. At that exact moment, the Volari heavy trooper activated a defense barrier, creating a temporary shield around the team. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll hold them." Leora nodded. "We must reach the control room now." Ethan followed her despite the pain. They ran through narrow halls, hearing the distant sounds of drones clashing with their team. The lights flickered violently as they reached the control room. The moment they entered, Ethan saw why the enemy wanted the place. A large device in the center was glowing with black and red energy. "What is that?" Ethan asked. "A signal amplifier," Leora said. "They use it to call larger units. Then we break it?" "We must disable it without causing the whole outpost to explode," she explained. Ethan moved to the console, typing fast despite the pain. Leora stood guard, watching the door and listening for any movement. "Hurry," she said. "I'm trying," Ethan replied. Drones approached again. Leora fought them at the doorway, blocking their entry. Ethan heard every clash of metal, every hiss of energy blades. She battled like someone holding back a tidal wave. Ethan knew she could not do it forever. The console beeped. "Done!" Leora pushed the last drone back and slammed the door shut. The amplifier's lights faded and the hum disappeared. But outside, more drones were arriving. They could hear them crawling across the walls. "We need extraction now," Ethan said. "The others?" Leora asked quietly. "We'll find them. But we have to get out first." They ran back toward the courtyard. Smoke filled the air. The drones had cracked parts of the buildings. Ethan spotted the heavy trooper lying on the ground with a damaged shoulder. The Ranthus scout helped him stand. "You're alive," Ethan said. "You too," the trooper grunted. Leora scanned the sky. "Signal the ship." Ethan activated his beacon. Moments later, the sound of a shuttle approached. The team ran toward the landing area just as drones swarmed the outpost's walls. The shuttle door opened. "Move," Ethan shouted. They jumped inside and the shuttle lifted off as drones tried to follow. Ethan collapsed onto a seat, breathing heavily. Leora knelt in front of him, her violet eyes studying his injury. "You protected me again," she said quietly. "You protected me first," he replied. "That is different," she said. "I am trained to protect. You risked without training." "Maybe I just care," Ethan said without thinking. Leora looked at him silently, something soft and uncertain in her expression. She didn't respond, but she stayed beside him the entire flight back. For Ethan, the mission had been terrifying and painful. For Leora, it had been confusing in ways she didn't understand. But one thing was clear to both of them. Their bond was no longer just partnership. It was becoming something deeper, something strong, something neither of them expected. The war changed direction faster than anyone expected. After the outpost mission, Ethan and Leora became known throughout the Alliance. Their teamwork had saved not only their squad but also prevented the Obsidian Corps from calling in a massive swarm. Commanders began assigning them to more critical operations, trusting their ability to survive even the most dangerous situations. But with more trust came greater risks. 2 weeks after their last mission, the Alliance discovered something terrifying. Hidden deep within a dying star system, the Obsidian Corps was building a superweapon. It had the power to wipe out entire planets, not just bases or fleets. If the machines finished it, the war would turn hopeless. The room was silent during the mission briefing. Officers from several species stood around the holographic display, watching the rotating image of a giant machine structure surrounded by thousands of drones. "This weapon cannot be allowed to activate," the commander said. "A small strike team must enter the core chamber and destroy it from inside." There was a pause. Then the commander's eyes fell on Ethan and Leora. "You two will lead the operation." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. The structure looked like a nightmare, layer after layer of defenses, drones, and traps. Leora did not blink. Her posture stayed firm, but Ethan saw a small twitch of her fingers. Even she understood the danger. After the briefing, they walked out together in silence. The hallway was bright, filled with the faint hum of machines and distant footsteps. Ethan noticed Leora's expression was different, calm but heavier, as if thinking deeply. "You don't have to take this mission," Ethan said gently. She stopped walking and looked at him. I am Valari. I do not step away from battle. That's not what I meant, Ethan replied. I mean, it's dangerous. More than anything we've done. We have survived danger before, she said. Yeah, but this is bigger. Much bigger. Leora studied him quietly. Are you afraid? Yes, Ethan admitted honestly. But that doesn't mean I won't go. Her eyes softened. Then we share the same fear. That surprised him. Valari warriors rarely admitted fear. For her to say it out loud meant she trusted him deeply. Before they boarded the mission transport, Leora placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. Ethan, whatever happens, we will face it together. He nodded. Always. The journey toward the enemy system felt long. The crew on the ship prepared quietly. Soldiers checked their weapons. Pilots discussed escape routes, and engineers loaded explosive charges. Everyone knew the risk. No one complained. But in the center of all the activity, Ethan and Leora stood together, calm but focused. When they finally arrived near the dying star system, the view was eerie. The sun in the middle was dim and cracked with energy lines, as if it was slowly breaking apart. Around it floated the Obsidian Core's superweapon, a massive structure shaped like a ring with giant towers extending outward. Thousands of enemy drones moved in perfect coordination around it. The pilot whispered, "This is madness." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Leora placed her hand on the wall, watching the weapon silently. This machine has no honor. It destroys without thought. That's why we're here, Ethan said softly. The ship moved carefully through the distant debris field and released a small infiltration pod. Ethan, Leora, and 3 specialist soldiers climbed inside. The pod shook violently as it slipped past enemy scanners. Ethan held the side rails tightly, while Leora stayed perfectly balanced, her breathing slow and steady. When the pod landed, the door opened into a dark metal tunnel deep inside the weapon structure. Lights flickered and the air smelled like burning metal. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped out with Leora beside him. The deeper they went, the more they saw how massive the weapon truly was. Pipes as thick as buildings ran along the walls. Energy pulsed beneath their feet. Drones patrolled in tight patterns. Their specialist team split off to plant charges in different sections while Ethan and Leora headed toward the core chamber. The path was narrow at times and wide at others, full of strange humming sounds. Sometimes they heard distant explosions, the other teams engaging drones. As they moved forward, Leora spoke quietly. "This place feels alive." Ethan nodded. "Like it's watching us." "It is," she said. "Machines listen. They are always listening." When they reached a large elevator shaft, they looked up. The chamber stretched endlessly upward, filled with glowing energy tubes and floating platforms. The final reactor chamber was at the top. "We climb," Leora said. Ethan sighed. "Of course," she smirked slightly, a rare expression. "Do not fall." They started climbing the narrow service ladders. Ethan tried to match Leora's speed but quickly realized it was impossible. Her Valari strength made her movement smooth and fast. Still, she slowed herself every few meters, waiting for him. Halfway up, the lights suddenly turned red. The ladder vibrated. "They detected us," Ethan shouted. Drones emerged from above and below, crawling along the walls like metallic spiders. Their red eyes glowed dangerously. "Keep climbing," Leora yelled. Ethan fired upward while hanging onto the ladder with one hand. The recoil made his arm shake, but he destroyed 2 drones. Leora jumped off the ladder, landed on a side platform, and fought the machines head-on. Her blade flashed through the dim light, cutting drones down with precise movements. Ethan kept climbing, trusting her to handle the battle. When he reached a platform halfway up, Leora joined him, but her shoulder armor had a deep crack. "You hurt?" Ethan asked. "Surface injury," she said. "Nothing serious." But Ethan saw the small tremble in her fingers. She was pushing herself too hard. They continued climbing until finally they reached the door to the core chamber. The door was thick and sealed, but Ethan hacked the panel while Leora stood guard. When the door opened, they both paused. The core chamber was enormous. A sphere of dark energy pulsed in the center, with massive wires feeding into it. Sparks flew across the chamber and the air vibrated with unstable power. "This is worse than I imagined," Ethan whispered. Leora stepped forward slowly. "If this activates, entire worlds will die." They entered and moved cautiously toward the control pillar. Drones hovered near the top, but they hadn't noticed them yet. Ethan started hacking the pillar. Sweat formed on his forehead. The system was complicated, constantly shifting in patterns he had never seen. "Almost there," he said. The chamber suddenly shook violently. Drones above them screamed with metallic voices and activated instantly. "Ethan, move!" Leora shouted. The drones descended in a swarm. Leora charged forward, striking them mid-air, but there were too many. Ethan kept typing, trying to finish the sequence. A blast hit the platform, throwing Ethan sideways. He nearly fell off the edge, but Leora grabbed him, pulling him back up with powerful strength. "Finish it," she yelled. He returned to the console, fingers flying across the controls. The room shook again, and cracks of light shot across the chamber. "I got it," Ethan shouted. "Shutting it down." The energy sphere in the middle began collapsing, swirling inward. The weapon was going to self-destruct. The drones went wild, attacking from all directions. "We need to run." Ethan said no. Leora grabbed him by the arm. "Follow me." She led him down a side passage as explosions erupted inside the chamber. The ground shook violently, sending sparks flying everywhere. Ethan could barely see, but he held onto Leora's arm tightly as they ran. A huge explosion tore through the chamber behind them. The heat wave almost pushed them off their feet. Leora covered Ethan with her body as debris rained down. They stumbled into a maintenance shaft and slid down a steep metal tunnel. Ethan shouted as they dropped, but Leora kept her grip on him. They finally crashed into a lower platform, breathless and bruised. The entire weapon structure was collapsing. "We must reach the exit before it implodes," Leora said. Ethan nodded weakly. "Lead the way." They ran through shaking corridors, dodging falling beams and sparks. The sound of collapsing metal filled the air. Ethan's legs felt heavy and his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Leora stayed close, sometimes pushing him forward, sometimes pulling him back from falling debris. Finally, they reached the outer door. The extraction ship was hovering outside, engines flaring. "Jump!" the pilot shouted. Leora grabbed Ethan's hand and leaped. They landed on the ship floor as it flew away from the collapsing weapon. The structure exploded behind them, sending waves of bright energy across space. Ethan lay on his back, gasping, feeling the vibration of the explosion through the ship. Leora knelt beside him, her expression filled with relief. "We survived," she said quietly. "Yeah," Ethan whispered. "Because of you." Leora shook her head slowly. "Because of us." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The danger was over, at least for now. But the bond they had built in fire and fear had grown stronger than either of them expected. And neither of them knew that the biggest surprise was still waiting after the war ended. The explosion of the Obsidian superweapon became the turning point of the entire war. News spread across the Alliance faster than light. Every Allied world celebrated when the massive machine broke apart and its pieces drifted into the dying star. The enemy lost their greatest project, their strongest advantage, and thousands of their drones. The machine empire began shrinking back, unable to recover fast enough. For the first time in years, there was hope. Ethan and Leora returned to the central command base with their team. Soldiers lined the hallways, cheering as they walked in. Humans, Valeri, Ranthus, and others saluted them with pride. Ethan felt awkward at the attention. He wasn't used to applause or praise. He preferred quiet victories, not loud celebrations. Leora, on the other hand, stood tall and calm, though even she seemed surprised at the amount of respect she received. When they reached the command center, leaders from multiple species congratulated them personally. Ethan tried to stay modest. Leora accepted the praise with disciplined grace. But whenever one of the commanders mentioned Ethan's bravery, she looked at him with a quiet, unreadable expression, something gentle behind her warrior mask. The next days felt different. The Alliance slowly recaptured territory. More planets were freed. More machines shut down. The Obsidian Core had lost control of the war and their empire was collapsing. For Ethan, it felt like a strange dream. He had fought almost every day for so long that peace felt unfamiliar. The base was quieter now. Soldiers trained without urgency. Ships flew slower. There were no alarms, no sudden missions, no late-night battles. Ethan walked through the open hangar one evening, watching the sunset reflect off the metal flooring. The sky had soft colors, orange, pink, and violet. After everything he'd seen, peaceful sunsets felt almost unreal. He heard soft footsteps behind him. "Ethan," Leora's voice said. He turned and smiled. "Hey, you finished your report?" Yes, she replied. And I wish to speak with you. Her tone was calm, but something in her eyes told him this was not a normal conversation. He waited patiently. Leora rarely wasted words. There is a ceremony tomorrow, Leora said. The High Council of the Alliance wants to honor our team. Ethan shrugged lightly. Another ceremony? I don't need medals. Medals are not the reason, she said. It is tradition. Celebration brings unity after war. I know, he replied. I just don't like the attention. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Your discomfort is unusual. Most humans enjoy celebration. I'm not like most, Ethan said with a small smile. She blinked once, slowly, as if absorbing the words. There was a brief silence. The wind whispered through the open hangar doors. Then Leora stepped closer, her posture different than usual, not strict, not defensive, but unsure. Ethan had never seen her unsure about anything. I have been thinking about what comes after. After the war? Ethan asked. Yes, he nodded. Same here. I'm not sure what I'll do. Maybe return to Earth. Maybe stay in the Alliance forces. I don't know. Leora looked down at her hands for a moment, something she never did. In Valeri culture, after a great war, choices must be made. What kind of choices? Ethan asked carefully. She did not answer directly. Instead, she said, Meet me after the ceremony. There is something important I must tell you. Ethan felt curiosity stir inside him. Her tone was serious but not cold. There was something emotional underneath it, something she was holding tightly. I'll be there, he promised. The next day, the ceremony began. Hundreds of soldiers filled the grand hall. Flags of every allied species hung from the ceiling. The air felt warm with pride and relief. For once, people were smiling instead of rushing into battle. Ethan stood beside Leora as the commanders spoke about sacrifice, unity, and courage. When they mentioned Ethan and Leora's mission, the hall filled with applause. Ethan felt embarrassed, but Leora placed a hand on his arm briefly. Just a tiny gesture to reassure him. After the ceremony ended, the soldiers slowly left the hall. Music played softly in the background. People talked about going home, rebuilding, and seeing families again. Leora walked toward a quiet balcony overlooking the gardens outside the base. Ethan followed her, his heart beat a little faster than normal. The air outside was cool and fresh. The sun was setting again, painting the sky with deep purple and gold. Leora stopped at the railing. Ethan stood beside her. You said you had something to tell me, he said gently. She nodded slowly, but she did not look at him immediately. Her hands tightened slightly around the railing. Ethan had never seen her nervous. In Valeri tradition, she began softly, a warrior does not bond lightly. We fight beside many, but trust only a few. And to speak what I am about to say is not easy for my kind. Ethan turned toward her fully. Take your time. I'm listening. She finally looked at him. Her violet eyes were calm, but filled with something he didn't recognize, something personal, something almost fragile. You risked your life for me more than once, she said, not as a soldier following orders, not as a partner bound by mission. You acted from your heart. I couldn't let anything happen to you, Ethan said quietly. And I could not bear danger coming to you, she replied. When you were injured, something in me changed. I felt fear, deeper than fear for myself. She took a slow breath. Ethan, there is a tradition in my culture called a life bond. It is a choice made by a warrior for someone they trust completely. It is not about command nor duty. It is about joining paths after war, supporting each other beyond battle, and sharing honor, respect, and loyalty. Ethan's chest tightened. He understood what she meant, but he waited for her to finish. Leora stepped closer, so close that he could feel her steady breath. I choose you, she said, her voice soft but strong. You are the one I trust with my life. You are the one I wish to stand beside. I did not expect this. I did not plan this, but my heart knows this truth. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, shock, disbelief, and something deeper. He had never imagined a Valeri warrior would feel this way about him. He wasn't the strongest, the fastest, or the bravest, but he had been there for her and she had been there for him. Leora, Ethan said softly, Are you asking me to be your partner? After everything? Yes, she whispered. If you wish it to. I offer my life bond. She reached into a small pouch on her armor and pulled out a crystal shaped like a teardrop, glowing faintly with blue light. She held it gently in both hands and lifted it toward him. This crystal is a symbol of unity for my people, only given once in a lifetime. Ethan felt emotion rise in his chest. He stepped forward and placed his hands over hers. I accept, he said, his voice calm but full of feeling. I want to be by your side. Not because of war, but because of you. Leora exhaled slowly, almost shakily, and placed the crystal in his hands. Then she gently touched her forehead to his, an ancient Valari gesture of deep trust. For the first time since he met her, Ethan saw her smile, not the small, controlled one she used on missions, but a true, soft smile filled with warmth. There is much we must learn about each other, she said. We have time now, Ethan replied. Peace gives us that. They stood together on the balcony as the last light of the sun faded. The war was ending. Their battles were over, and a new path had just begun. Not as commander and soldier, not as partners of survival, but as two souls choosing a future together. For Ethan and Leora, the galaxy no longer felt like a place of destruction. It felt like a home waiting to be explored. Side by side as more than warriors, more than allies,